All right, hello and welcome everyone. As promised, today is another top 10 for Baro, but this time it is not going to be, marred in favoritism and my like towards cosmetics. So today, these are going to be all gameplay relevant items that I think are the 10 best items that you can get from Baro, and we're going to be starting with the Super Vandal. The Super Vandal is an incredibly good weapon, but more so than that, it is a tool. And the thing that makes the Super Vandal a tool is that it is incredibly good at taking down nullifier bubbles, which is very important, and it has entropy burst. Entropy burst makes it so that the Super Vandal will constantly supply you with energy as long as you're getting affinity. You get affinity by murdering enemies. And what are we doing literally all the time in Warframe? Oh, right, murder. So this is going to constantly be giving you a supply of energy, and a lot of players don't have access to a great one of those. So in addition to being a really good weapon, you're getting a ton of energy. And also on the side with Entropy Burst, it's also an AoE of extra damage. So that's nothing to scoff at either. So at number 10, I think the Super Vandal is a pretty safe bet. There are, of course, a lot of machine guns in Warframe that can kind of do the damage part of what the Super Vandal does, but the tool nature of what it adds to that, I think, is really important. And speaking of tools, let's talk about number 9, which is Primed Animal Instinct. Primed Animal Instinct is hugely good. Every single companion in the entire game can equip this, and it gives you 55 loot radar and a 33 enemy radar. Both of these things are really convenient to have around, and as much as I wanted to put primed regen on this list, Primed Animal Instinct goes on all of the pets, Kavats and Kubros and Sentinels. So just by virtue of that, it is kind of naturally more useful, because there's actually reasons to use Kubros and like Kavats now, because they all have access to a vacuum like mod. So this is incredibly useful, especially with like the many resource farms people are going to be going on, looking for like rare containers. There's just so many applications for what you're doing with this mod that it's definitely worth picking up for sure. And then besides that, we actually have 2 mods to talk about, but I'm just going to show one of them because the other one is just a different weapon version, and that is Jolt and Voltaic Strike. So Jolt and Voltaic Strike are the dual stats for melee weapons and sidearms. Why are these on this top 10 list? Why are they at number 8? The reason is because you can only get them from Baro, and they go on most weapons of their respective types. The other 2 you can technically farm from Hive missions, so I wouldn't suggest doing that. If you are really like good on ducats, you probably actually want to pick up all 4 of the dual stat electric mods and no other of the dual stats. All the other dual stats are very easy to get elsewhere, so don't get fire or ice dual stats. I'm warning you, you're going to waste your ducats if you do it. So the dual stat electric mods are a very safe pickup. They're 300 each, but it's very worth it as it goes into most weapons. Now let's talk about Primed Point Blank. So Primed Point Blank is just raw and out. It's more damage for shotguns. There's a lot of really powerful shotguns in Warframe, and them just doing more damage is pretty good. Whether that's the Plasmor, Vacor Heck as we're seeing here, the Tigris Prime, whatever shotgun you happen to be into, the Corinth, etc., Prime Point Blank goes on it. It goes on all of them. Any shotgun they ever release in the future, Prime Point Blank very likely to be included in that build, unless they somehow power creep this Prime mod, which is very unlikely to happen. So this is a super safe mod to pick up, and is, I think, very reasonable as a number 7. Now, as the number 6, we're going to go back to a thing we've already seen, and that is the Maradetron. The Maradetron is so fucking useful. It is a huge, just wonderful tool that you can apply to a situation. It does plenty of damage to kill anything at a reasonable level, and it does a shitload of status. This build here has Seeker in it, which gives it punch through, which means it's going to be able to hit a ton of enemies at once. And it has a 100% status chance with this build for every single pellet it fires, and it's going to be doing radiation, blast, and corrosive. Corrosive gets rid of all that pesky armor on any enemies that might happen to have it. Radiation, any enemies that are buffing each other, doesn't work anymore. They're no longer on the same team. And blast, crowd controls everybody, puts them on the ground. Super useful. Warframes like Nidus, Mag, etc. This is a really useful tool that they can just utilize to get these procs when they need them. And also, it's just a good weapon to boot. So that's absolutely excellent for this weapon, and I think it definitely deserves its spot at number 6. Now, however, we're going to get into the real meat of things, the top 5. So first and foremost, it's Prime Pressure Point. Prime Pressure Point, much like Prime Point Blank, is just raw damage for every single melee weapon in the entire game. Pretty much everything I said about Point Blank applies, except for its melee weapons this time. And because it's melee weapons this time, this comes in at number 5, because melee weapons are just absolutely fucking insane right now. Like, they demolish everything if you have a decently built one. And it's not hugely important to get this mod, but it is extremely worth getting this mod. And now we have another thing to talk about, which is 2 mods together, and that is Prime Pistol Gambit and Prime Target Cracker. These go on an extremely large amount of secondaries, and they always go on together. Well, not always. There's the new core, which only uses Prime Target Cracker, but that's a meme, so we're not gonna pay attention to that one. These 2 critical mods for secondaries. Any secondary that is a critical weapon, this is going on them. That's just what's happening. You're putting both of these mods on it. Most secondary weapons get 5v polarities or sometimes more, as you can see here on the Gut Rattler, and they're essential for all crit builds on secondaries. And very few weapons don't use these 2 mods in the secondary slot. Of course, there is the exception that we just put on this top 10 list of the Maradetron, and because of that, the Maradetron is also an incredibly cheap weapon endo-wise to put together in terms of its full build. But if you've got the Endo, if you've got the Ducats, because these are 400 each, although there's likely to be some kind of discount for the Tennocon relay, these 2 items are extremely good, depending on what secondaries you tend to favor. Now, we're getting into the top 3. So the top 3 mods, first, we are going to be talking about Primed Flow. Primed Flow, an extremely powerful mod, 275% energy max. That is a lot of energy. You can see even on a frame that has like a low-ish amount of energy, 510. That is a massive change. And while Wukong is not necessarily going to use Prime Flow, I've certainly seen people doing that on Wukong instead of what I have here as the Augur Secret slot. They use Prime Flow there instead. I've seen that, and I think that's super valid. I personally don't use it there, but on many Warframes, the combination of Primed Flow and quick thinking can turn a Warframe that is like nothing and will just die in one shot into a Warframe that struggles to die in content in Warframe. And that major combination is part of the reason why it's on this list, but also just having more energy to do more abilities is just good. Like, that's just the way that works. It's just a good thing to do, is to have more resources so you can do your abilities more, as that's, you know, kind of the thing in Warframe. But besides that being the thing in Warframe, there's a much more important thing in Warframe, and that is number 2, and that is Primed Reach. 165% range. So this mod is just barely number 2. It is fighting tooth and fucking nail for number 1 on this list. But I had to put it at number 2. And there's a reason that we're going to get to when we talk about number 1 for that. But I want to show just how insanely good Primed Reach is on a weapon that is very good, like the Kamakura Reaper that we've got here. I'm going to show its range without Primed Reach. We're just going to have AI pause, and they're just out over here. You can see, can't hit. Maybe about here. Okay, out here is where I could start hitting the enemies. We're like, you know, a decent distance away. This is where you'd expect this weapon to hit to, I think. Now let's put Primed Reach on and see how this kind of, you know, changes the landscape of Warframe as a whole. 165% range. And we're going to make sure these enemies are standing right where they were whenever we spawned them in. Now I'm going to stand probably here. Oh, probably could stand back maybe a little bit more. Yeah, no, it's about here. So yeah, it's way farther. And the big thing about this is that lots of weapons, especially like the common cursory prayers, as you can see, it spins fully around you when you swing this weapon. And whenever you increase the range outward that much, you increase your damage. This is a thing that a lot of people don't think about in Warframe. But if I swing and I'm hitting enemies that are 2 feet away from me in a full circle, that's one thing. That's close range. You're unlikely to hit more than 1 or 2 enemies. But if you're swinging a weapon and it's got, like, you know, 10 feet in front of you and around you that it's hitting, you're hitting rooms of enemies, like everybody, all of them, and you're clearing so fast as long as you have any kind of a decent melee weapon. Like, it is absolutely absurd. Like, it is just so much distance that you can just shred full groups of enemies, just everyone in front of you, everyone in a whole room. It's just impossible to justify not using primed reach on any of the really good melee weapons in Warframe. Like, it's just an objective need that at some point you should get and level primed reach because it's that good. But what is the one thing that's better than primed reach? What is the one mod that is better than primed reach? Well, a lot of you probably guessed it's prime continuity. So I actually went through and looked at every single Warframe in the entire game, and we have 40 right now. We have 40 Warframes right now. 38 out of 40 use prime continuity as like their major, as like a major mod in their build. 38 of 40. That is how good this mod is. All it does is add 55% ability duration, but holy fuck is that important. It is an obscenely powerful mod because ability duration can also translate into efficiency for a number of Warframes, like it is doing on our boy Wukong right here, and just like more duration on your abilities. Like, just straight up, all abilities last 55% longer. For so many abilities, that can be like 15 seconds. Like, changing an ability that lasts 30 seconds to over 45 seconds. That's huge. It's hugely impactful. And it's on 38 out of 40. The two Warframes that don't use this, and one of them actually has the potential to use it, but I think the build style is bad, is Hildryn, where her dump stat is duration, and Necros. And Necros, the only reason he's not using duration is because I think the Shield of Shadows build is kind of bad right now. If you were using a Shield of Shadows build, you would use prime continuity. And the only reason it's not on him, and we don't only have one odd man out Warframe, is because Necros's SOS build isn't as good as like his other build with the armor stacking mod. God, what is it called? I forget. Armor health conversion. It's not as good as his health conversion build. But yeah, like prime continuity is the sauce. Like, you know, you've got something powerful whenever it's being used on 38 out of 40 Warframes. And I'd be willing to bet of the 2 new Warframes we know are coming up, the Runner Man and like the Fat McEats Man, one of them or both of them are gonna use prime continuity, and you're probably gonna want to have access to it when those Warframes come out, or when you're building any fucking Warframe in this game, basically. So yeah, that is going to be number 1 with a bullet. Like, it is hard. You'd be hard pressed to find a lot of mods that are being used on all Warframes. And damn, son, like there's only one mod I think that's seeing more use than this one on Warframes, and that's probably corrosive projection. But yeah, in terms of what you can get from Baro, this is it. This is exactly it. So yeah, I hope you guys have enjoyed this video, going over a kind of more objective list of the gameplay relevant items that you can get from Baro Teer. But with that, this is going to be the last video I am putting out before Tennocon. Tennocon is coming up. If anybody wants to know what I'm up to while I'm there or anything like that, there might be 1 or 2 videos while I'm away in Canada. But you can, of course, follow me on Twitter, and I'm going to be posting from there pretty much all weekend, and you can ask me like questions and all kinds of business. So yeah, that link to my Twitter is down in the description. It's just twitter.com/Brozime. And today I'm going to be streaming, so twitch.tv/Brozime if you want to come hang out on the last day I'm going to be here before Tennocon. That would be awesome. But I hope you guys have enjoyed this video, and I will see you tomorrow. Well, or probably not tomorrow. I'm going to be on a plane. Later, everyone.